Ansley, it was so much fun watching you direct this. I mean, at least the first two rehearsals. Of course, I wasn't in there on the last, and I kind of was so amazed by your questions. You know,
Mm.
I love that. I always feel like the questions are more important than the answers, and can you ask the questions, and that kind of sort of gentle probing way that you would sort of say, well, what about this? What does that mean? Talking to the actor mostly, or to me. How do you kind of like? How do you generally approach that in terms of questions versus answers versus giving direction and that kind of thing?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I will read a piece, and I read your play, and I was really affected by it. But I also learned that as a director, I certainly will have ideas or things that I feel about the play, but that I may not have all the best ideas. And that often the other folks in the room are going to come up with things that's like, wow, I never thought about that. So I really I tend to let my curiosity lead in that process. And sometimes I'm asking the question to try to get somewhere, but often I really am genuinely asking, like, okay, well, what like how does this hit you? And particularly with your piece, since it's one actor, I thought, well, it's really important that that Elizabeth Stanley is bringing herself to it,
Mm.
and what's like what works in her gut, and not just like, oh, I think that this is what it means. And there were a couple of points where she had a different view of something, and I was like, oh, you know what, I like that better, because it
Can you
worked on her
can you
better.
remember any of those? Do you remember?
Uh, yeah, the one that sticks out in my mind is like after she goes back in and she's looking out the window, and she says, "Oh, I'm back in my space." And I thought, "Oh, is it she's sort of back in her cage, that it's sort of closed." And Elizabeth said, "No, she's back in her comfort." uh, and that it's like, oh, I feel like I can now be expansive because of where I am. And I was like, oh, so boy, I like that a whole lot better. uh,
Yeah, that was brilliant. That was brilliant on her part.
yeah, but for me, it's like it's that conversation. And I think your writing is so evocative, and yet and so poetic that it lends itself for, like, well, I don't know, what do you think this means? uh, and so I think it was important for me to have that, ask those questions, and see, like, okay, well, like, what is this saying to us, so that then hopefully we could fill it up with something that then it would speak to other people.
Yeah, that's great. And I especially remember when you were asking about the line, my privileged pain.
Mm.
And, is that shame or is that something else or what is that? And I loved hearing you guys talk about it because of course some things, I work really hard on the script, but
Yeah.
the first draft just came in one whoosh. And so some of those things, they come from this deep place, but on a cognitive level or a conscious level, I don't really know what I meant. It just came. Because most of my work after the editing work was about rhythm and sound, and you know, I felt like the meaning stuff, the stuff that had to do with the emotions and the conflicting emotions and meaning, that was like there right from the first.
Oh, sure. What
Yeah.
do you feel like there was? Was there a moment or an incident or something that was the spark for you, or the genesis for you?
Well, a couple of things. Around that time, there were some articles in the paper. I mean, there was this whole issue. Of course, everybody knows San Francisco, homeless people, blah, blah. But when the shelter in place first was instituted, the city said they weren't going to disturb tent encampments. Because usually it's this cat and mouse game. You know, people have tent encampments. City comes along, cleans them up at some point. Of course, what, you know, they just move to the next block because where else are they going to go? They have no home. And so they said, okay, we're not going to disturb it. People need shelter. They have, you know, tents are some kind of shelter. And then after a period of time in certain neighborhoods, especially in the Tenderloin, which is the neighborhood here that's kind of the epicenter of homelessness, it got so intense on the street that people were literally imprisoned in their apartments. And there were some articles, you know, it was just so dense. And then there was a lot of open air drug dealing, and there was a lot, you know. And so there were articles in the paper about people, and they were not like your normal, like scared little middle class people who can't be around homeless people. They were, you know, AIDS activists and other activists and homeless activists, but who had health issues.
Yeah.
And they literally could not leave their apartments because the street was so dense with all of this stuff, and they couldn't, and they couldn't, the city didn't close down those streets to cars, so there was just no place to walk. And I was thinking about that. And then meanwhile, the tent encampments in my neighborhood got pretty intense too. It wasn't quite that bad, and I did leave my apartment, but it, you know, I could see it happening. So I was just thinking about that. And I've done a lot of community artwork with homeless and formerly homeless. So I'm just sort of real tuned into both sides of that equation. How, and I have a family member who spent time homeless. And so I'm tuned into like all that difficulty, and then also the difficulty of people who are trying to navigate the streets, the sidewalks. And can I actually walk down the sidewalk? And then of course, with the added thing of being afraid of getting COVID, you know, so that was kind of the stuff that was roiling around in me.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. You know, I feel like what you put down on paper, you know, certainly encapsulated a lot of what you know, I think a lot of people were feeling. You know, whether we're you know, we're in San Francisco or not, just that sense of like I'm inside, and what do I do with myself, and then you know, like seeing you know, whether you know, you're seeing the protests and things on the news, or you know, going out yourself. I think you know, a lot of people could relate to that. You know, and then also the notion of breath. You know, like how do we, you know, just breathe and let ourselves center.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Chris put a question in the chat.
Yeah, whereas I'm trying to find the, oh, here's the chat. Okay, yeah. Why am I not finding, why is it not coming up? Well, you can read the, oh, here it is.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, where do you find the rhythm and musicality of the piece? I know you have a background in poetry. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really have a musical background, but yeah, I do have a background in poetry. And you know, it's funny because I think playwriting is closer to poetry than it is like to fiction, to novels and plays, because it is so much, it is an oral thing, and you know, they're both meant to be heard. And there's that kind of density of the language that you have in plays that, I mean, you may have in short fiction too, but especially in plays and poetry, where every word has to carry a lot of weight.
Right.
But I think with this piece, maybe part of the reason I went more in toward the poetry, was one, because it's a solo piece. So there's a way, because I know that when I'm writing dialogue, I'm always very tuned into how do people really talk, which is often, they jump tracks in the middle of a sentence, they never finish a sentence, they talk on top of each other. But it's quite different when you're talking to yourself.
Hmm.
It's a monologue to the mirror, to the unseen audience, or to the device, and you can speak in a different way. And also, I think I told you this when that first draft, I actually didn't know I was writing a play.
Hmm.
I just wrote it because I had to write it. And I actually was having an anxiety attack, and so it was like my way of dealing with the anxiety attack. It was that, okay, third person observer, she's having an anxiety attack, but I think it was because I wasn't clear, and then after I wrote it, it was like, oh, this could be a solo play. So I think I just went more into that realm because I just didn't know what I was doing when I wrote
Sure.
it.
Do,
Yeah.
do you find yourself like when you write that more often does it just sort of it falls out and then you say, oh, and now I see what I have, or do you tend to be more methodical about your writing?
Probably more the former, but it kind of depends on the project.
Mm,
But yeah, when and I usually I don't the short play form is not one that I've focused on.
mm.
And so often when I write longer plays, I just write scenes and I don't even know where they fit. I'm just writing scenes and then I'm like, well, where does this go together? So I don't tend to plot things out and be methodical ahead of time. Yeah.
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 Now, when you are able to collaborate with actors and a director, um, how do you like to begin that process?
Oh, well, God, if I had my druthers, I would always love to be able to do that early in the process. And that's what the big name playwrights get when they get all the grant money and they can go to Sundance and everybody comes and is paid. I have had that experience a couple times, just with beloved actors and directors locally who played around with the text while I was still discovering what it was. And that to me is just the miracle way of working.
Mm,
It's just hard to make it happen when because usually you got to pay people, and
yeah,
where does that come from and all that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, great. I don't know what else do you should we talk about, Chris?
Does he have anything?
And this is a wonderful conversation. I think this is I love to hear that it's about that, especially Elizabeth, you talking about just now, um, working with actors and directors early in the process, um, and how that collaborative spirit I think is so important. That's so important to me, and I know that. I mean, I think I learned that early on from Ansley, and I mean, I think we all work in that collaborative way, which is so, um, to me, about exciting about theater. Um, so I guess on that note, Ansley, um, can you speak to how it was to re-collaborate with Elizabeth from Indiana?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much folks might know, but uh, when I was a student at Indiana, I directed Once on This Island, and Elizabeth Stanley was Urzuli for me then. And so we haven't worked together, uh, in 20 years. We've stayed in touch, but not worked together again as actor and director. So I know for me, well, it was personally special, because she's so great. I mean, she was great then, and she's only gotten better as time has gone by. So it was great to work with, like somebody that you have a real affinity for, and with. But I think also it it allowed us to, to really dive into the work. We didn't have that time that you usually have on the first day of rehearsal with, when you have a director with new actors that, you don't know and you don't have a relationship with. It made it very easy for us to, sort of hop in because it's like, oh, we could, gossip and talk about folks, and we just had this, comfortability, which I think really helped. It really allowed us to get right into the heart of the work. Um, yeah, and I think have for me at least, I felt safe. I felt like, oh, I know like where I feel like I can go, or like what questions I feel I can ask, uh, because I we know each other, and we've kept in touch, and not that I have gotten to see Elizabeth a lot, but I've certainly been to New York. I go see her shows. I go backstage, and that I think helped the work. I think it helped. I helped. It helped to make it deeper. I think it helped to for us to get on a same page with it quicker than if I didn't know, or if we had to spend time to sort of forge that relationship.
Is there anything, and this will be my last question for you both, but is there anything that is um, like safe or unsafe about the Zoom process, and how that's different, and I guess how that's different than the the process we all have known forever?
Oh, sure. Well, that's the $64 question anymore. Uh, and I feel like, oh, a lot of people are wrestling with that. Uh, for me, like I believe that it has afforded us opportunities to do things that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do. Whether that's working with people who are, 500 or 2,000 miles apart. For us to be able to be in rehearsal and have Elizabeth, in with us, and she's in San Francisco and I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, and Elizabeth Stanley's in New York. For us to be able to say, oh, we can get together and work on this. That in and of itself is huge. And I do think that that being in this space allows you to uh, it allows you to explore things in a way that you can maybe take more risk, that you're maybe more comfortable because you're not like, oh, I'm not like right here with other people. I'm in my own space. I'm in my own home, uh, and allows you to maybe be more in your comfort, so that you can maybe reflect more deeply on the work that you're doing.
Well, I certainly saw that ease that you two had with each other right from the start. And it just felt like it was such a privilege to sort of be in the room, the virtual room with you, seeing that. And yeah, I mean, how many times does it play, for a short play, if somebody says they'll produce it, you just have to go, well, I hope it worked out, because you're going to fly across the country for, so that just was really exciting. It wouldn't have happened without the pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time today.
Oh, sure. Well,
Oh,
thanks for the opportunity. And it was good to see you, Elizabeth. I know we had talked. Like you said, you were there for our first couple of rehearsals, but it's great to, now that the thing is, like, our process is over, to have a conversation and, sort of close the circle on things.
yeah. And I just want to say, as deep as it was, I mean, right from Elizabeth's first read, I was really moved, but it just got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I just want to thank both you and her, I mean, for everything, but those silences were incredible. Those silent moments, and that you allowed that and she allowed that and filled that up. And I mean, I love silence on stage. And that's one thing also where this medium, you know, we saw her face really close up going through those changes in those moments. And I was in tears at a couple of them. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I was too. Like even, you know, even though I sat there and watched it while we were filming it, to then go back and, you know, to see it when it was all edited together, I was like, wow, this is really, it's really moving.
Yeah,
Um,
I was really moved.
yeah, yeah, no, it's a great piece. I'm thankful for I'm thankful for you writing it, and thank you for Chris for thinking of bringing me on uh, and and getting me reconnected with Elizabeth and us being able to do this great work.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thanks for picking it.